Hi, good evening, everyone. I guess we have enough participants to at least start the session. Uh, Great. So today's session would be on Lean Model Canvas, and it would be taken by Mr. Rakesh Rajiv from Society for Innovation and Entrepreneurship Science. Uh, Rakesh, sir, you're there, right?
He's logged in.
Yeah, I think he was there. We'll just wait for him to come back.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, hi, sir. Great.
Yeah.
Uh, Great. So, sir, we have enough participants to at least start the session. I guess they would be
Sure.
joining in between. So, yeah.
Sure.
So, welcome everyone today to today's session on Lean Model Canvas by Society for Innovation and Entrepreneurship Sign. Today's session will be taken by Mr. Rakesh Rajiv. I'll just give a brief bio about Mr. Rakesh sir. So he is currently Senior Incubation Manager at Society for Innovation and Entrepreneurship Sign, which is the innovation and entrepreneurship hub of IIT Bombay, technology business incubator, I should say. Uh, yes, sir leads the incubation activities and external national and international programs at Sign and have closely worked with 100 plus startups. He is a technology and management professional with 10 plus years experience in technology business incubation, life sciences research, marketing, and intellectual property law. So we welcome you, sir, to today's session. Uh, we also have our principal investigator, Professor Kavi Arya here. Uh, Professor Kavi Arya, would you like to give us some introductory words?
Thanks. Anyway, I'm happy to welcome Rakesh here to this session. So this year we made a slight break with the past in the sense that we've got the professionals in now. We've been covering all these things about entrepreneurship, innovation talks and all that on our own and with some guests and so on. So this is the first time we've actually systemically involved IIT Bombay institutions like Sign in engaging with us. So that gives a possible destination for any cool ideas that come out of the entire process. So I'm very, very happy to welcome Rakesh here, and with his colorful experience in this area and including in life sciences, maybe he can explain what he's doing as a life science uh, person in the area of innovation and entrepreneurship. And with his insights, I'm sure that we'll do something really interesting because life sciences and all these things that he's done resonate very strongly with the area chosen this year, which is agriculture. So I feel that he'll also be able to relate to it better than other people. So without much ado, I'd like to welcome Rakesh Rajiv to this venue and invite him to give his talk on lean model. First, you'll have to describe what lean model is, and then we'll take it from there. Okay, Raj,
Sure.
over to
Sure.
you.
Thank you so much, Professor Kavi. Thank you so much, Iantra, for hosting this session. It's a pleasure to be here virtually, but I'm seeing different names. I can't see faces here. I can see 109 people, but I can't see faces. Can we all come on video, please? Yeah. Otherwise, it's boring talking to a screen. So, would appreciate if all of us can come switch on their videos. I think most of them are using their mobiles. Are they?
Yeah, I guess yes. I request all participants to please turn on their videos.
They tend to be very shy, for some reason. Divya, you're very brave. Please introduce yourself. Divya K.
Yeah.
We can't hear you. And we have Muthu who's in a bus apparently at the moment.
Could you hear me, sir?
Yes, yes, we can hear you.
Myself, K.
Do
Divya.
tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, sir. I'm K. Divya, working as an assistant professor in KPR IT, Coimbatore. So I have read the problem statements. I'm searching for the solution. So within 24, we'll try to submit.
Great. So KPR Institute is a very, very active college where the principal is also totally on board. And in our other initiatives, and including this one, they made a huge drive, and we got a large number of participants. Large means almost 100, right? In EYRC,
Yes,
100 teams,
yes,
right?
sir. Yes.
So it's pretty cool. It just shows that they're highly motivated. Their principal, Dr. Akila, is quite a powerhouse there, right? And we've had some good experience with them. So good to have you on board, Divya.
Yeah, sir.
Okay. Why is, well, this usually happens. Everybody is trying to conserve bandwidth and they don't like to show their videos, or maybe they are sitting in a banyan or something like this and don't wish to reveal it. Right. So, Rakesh, this is the maximum that we can can expect to see. Hey, Stephen Charles, tell us about yourself.
We have Jay Wala as well over here. Maybe Jay, you can talk about.
Rakesh, I think people like to hide behind their laptops and all that and kind of snoop on what's going on. So I suggest that you go on.
Yes, sir. Can I speak?
Yeah, please do.
Yes, sir. Myself, Shivendra Vikas. I am from Government College of Engineering, Krishnagiri district.
Thank you,
Have you
Shivan.
thought of a topic that you'll be choosing in your entry for the competition?
It's a smart education, sir.
Smart?
Smart education.
Smart
Irrigation.
Okay,
Yes,
okay.
sir.
Good, good.
We find a problem solution in problem as smart irrigation.
Okay. So, Rakesh, since we are recording the session, what we find is that we record the session and presume that people have had maybe scheduling issues and they'll come to it when they are given the link afterwards. So that's another option. And there are 119 people on board, and that's the typical kind of number. And I think we can continue actually.
Sure, sure. Is my voice audible enough? I'm just having some issues with my internet.
Yes, yes, it's
fine.
quite.
It's fine. Clear? Okay, great. Great. So quickly, this session is going to be on lead model canvas. I'll explain what it is, but the whole idea is to kind of create your business model while at an early stage, while you're working on your problem solution step. This kind of canvas, or it's a one-pager template, which will help you to think through in terms of how to develop your idea, what are the assumptions, test your your hypothesis, or test your assumptions, and get response from the market and continuously rebuild on this particular model. I'm sure nobody understood anything, but it's basically a one-page business model template. Okay, you will understand only if I share my screen. But before that, Sir was telling me to explain what I do in terms of EdSign and with my life science and management background. So I've been, and I'm a BTech Biotech from Vellore Institute of Technology, and I did my postgraduate diploma in Bioscience Enterprise from the University of Auckland. And I've been working on life science research I was working from around 2009 till around 2000. 14, I was working on life science research commercialization, meaning any life science idea at a very early stage, we help them in converting them into successful ventures. I was overseas, I moved back to India in 2014, joined Sign in 2015. The last 6 years, I've been looking after incubation related activities here. And most of my work goes into researching and identifying good sort of technologies which are existing in the market. Also with a special focus on IIT Bombay because we are located on campus. So most of my work is involving interacting with students, faculty members on campus and also outside. As I said, we do a lot of research and development in terms of identifying good sort of startups. So that work is usually through a call for application for grant funding, for incubation, for acceleration, and different support that we provide for startups. And if you look at our portfolio of startups, if we have 184 startups currently, 184 startups we have incubated so far, of which 52 are currently incubated with us. Half of them are life science or healthcare related startups, mainly because Government of India has put in a lot of funding through Department of Biotechnology's BIRAC. BIRAC is a Section 8 company within Department of Biotech, which provide funding for early stage healthcare and life science startups, and that's one of the, and also agriculture as well. And that's one of the reasons even across India we see a lot of startups in the healthcare domain. Having said that, there is also other tech such as the clean tech, energy, mechatronics, and then Industry 4.0 sort of startups which are getting a lot of interest from within the investor community as well as from entrepreneurs and investors alike. So that's a quick brief. I know we are at 4:18 and we have time only till 5 o'clock, maybe till 5:15. So what I'll do is I'll share my screen and try to take you through the lean model canvas. Do let me know if you're able to see my screen in full
Yeah.
screen.
Yeah, we are able to see.
Great. Lean model canvas. How many of you know, because it's very difficult, taking this session without any feedback. So how many of you have heard about lean model canvas? Is there anyone? Or you can say yes, no on chat. Is there any response?
Most
Okay.
people will say no.
Most people are saying no. Yeah.
Okay, great. Got it. Cool. So good that I'm able to explain it to you. It's a one-page business plan. Okay, a one-page business plan. If you want to know what it is, I'll have to advance my slide to this. Okay, so it is a business plan, basically a problem, solution, value proposition, etc. So this is how it looks in full. And this is a one page. Okay, this is what you need to solve, on what you need to write down in terms of understanding your business model. It's very simple, not rocket science. Okay, I can share the screen. You don't have to take screenshots. You can make notes if required. This is a lean canvas. Now going to the prelude of this whole thing, it's very simple. Okay, don't worry about it. Before that, can you tell me what are the main number one reason why startup fail? What do you think is the main reason why a startup fail? You can type on chat. Not able to see response. What is the main reason why startup fail? Innovation is good, but why do they fail? Why do new innovations fail? Oops, I gave the answer. Okay, why do innovation fail? Okay, management, yeah, team, lack of guidance, not properly planning, not understanding of market demand. Yes, not understanding. There is no market need. Having no market need is the major reason why startups fail. Look at this, 42% of startups fail because they make something which the market does not need. Can you think of examples why of innovations which didn't work out because there was no market need, or they were too early for the market? Again, please type in chat. But any innovations which you think that it failed they were because of lack of market need? Google Glass, okay. More answers? Let me give an example. There was this, have you seen this water filling booth in local train stations or railway stations? There is a booth where you can refill your water bottles. And they give water at 5 rupee per liter. 5 rupee per liter they give water, purified water. And compared to a Bisleri or a mineral water bottle for 1 liter cost around 20 rupees. This innovation was good. Water was very pure, but there were not many takers. If you see those water booths in railway stations or anywhere, there are not many people who get water from there. What is the main reason why they failed? If you look, it is not because of
I would think it's because Indians usually cheat at these kind of things, at branding opportunities, right? So people would not trust whether that tap is a genuine tap or not, you know.
Let's assume that it's really good and they have certification, and they've mentioned that it is 99.9 whatever and ozone treated, all of that. Still people wouldn't go there and refill their bottles. It's a fairly simple answer. Mindset, branding. Imagine they have, okay, there is no Bisleri sort of branding, but let's imagine Bisleri also started this mobile water booth. Or let's say Pepsi started mobile water booth. Aquafina.
Maybe because people already have the water available at their home and they are used to carry their water bottles and all. So as you have mentioned, there is no market need.
You need to carry a bottle to fill. You need to carry a bottle. A lot of people, when they are thirsty, they won't be carrying a bottle with them, or they won't be carrying a glass of water. They will just be walking on the road, and they need water. They won't just, you can't go fill water in your hands. You need to, because it was lack of convenience, and they didn't really understand what the customer need was. Had they done a market survey where the people would pay 5 rupees per liter for buying this thing.
Are you saying that they did not give bottled water? They just had, they had a source available, no container.
Yeah, no containers. You had to carry your own containers.
Right. So most people don't have containers on them, basically.
On them, yeah. And if they were giving, probably it'll come to more than 20 rupees a liter, which Bisleri and Aquafina and everybody else is giving. And obviously they would.
The reason they buy Bisleri is to use that bottle,
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, just giving an example of
Bisleri walas buy Bisleri to use the bottle,
True. So I'm just saying, understanding the market need and understanding what the customer requires is paramount before you start with any innovation. A lot of people, they make innovations and it's like a solution looking for a problem. It's the other way around. You need to identify the problem and then make the solution for that. And that's fundamentally what I would like to drive through my session today, is to I think that's how eYantra program is also designed, that identifying the problem and then making the solution for that. And even at Sign, so we are the incubator at IIT Bombay, right? So we ask all our innovators to do something called as a market discovery or a customer discovery process, wherein they go into the market before they actually build the product. They go into the market and see, if I build a product like this, what would be the features that the customers would like to see? What would be the price that they would be willing to pay for this particular innovation before it is being built, and get feedback from them, and then you kind of make these changes and start building your product. It's called as the build, measure, learn model. That's the lean model, and it's the iterative process, and it is lean. Lean meaning it is not consuming a lot of resource. So you build a little bit of it, go to the market, you measure, you receive feedback from it, learn, and then you build it before building the entire product. So again, taking the example of the water filter, had they gone to the market and realized that this wouldn't have a market because people look at convenience, and if water bottle non-availability of water bottle will be a deterrent to them, they should probably not be looking at that market. They should be thinking of a different innovation where it actually gives it with a bottle which comes out probably cheaper than a branded bottle or something of that sort. There were multiple reasons such as lack of trust, all that. It could be other reasons, and if the startups identify these problems early, they are better off. My professor in college used to say, fail early and fail cheap. If you fail late, you would have already expended a lot of money into building your product, and that'll be expensive. It's okay if you fail. And that's another thing that I want to drive today, that you work on a solution, you realize that there will be multiple reasons why it could fail, right? This particular would be because of your fault if you didn't do that market research or identify what the market is. But this is within your control. The main reason is within your control. The others, there are a lot of people to help you, find the team, etc. But if there is no market, then it's detrimental. Another main reason is not having the right team. Because if, for example, a product fails, and if you see that a lot of our startups, they may not, after some sort of research, they identify that this is not the right market for me. Then what will happen? Is it possible that you do not make me the host, because I can see people leaving, coming, and so I'm just getting a little distracted with that. If you can remove me as host, that'll help.
If we do that, then you can't present, no?
Oh, is it? Okay.
I'll try 1 minute. You do not want to be a host, okay?
Because I get my screen is popping up when people is leaving, joining, leaving. That was the only reason.
Okay, I have done that. Maybe now it should not happen.
Great, thank you. Right. So no, it's still there. It's okay. I'll try not to focus there. So even at Sign, we'll have. I'll turn my video for some time. Can you turn off my video?
I can't do that. You'll have to do it. So. There's generally a floating window at the top in WebEx. So if you hover your mouse at the top, you'll get that option of switching your mic on and off and video as well.
Okay, I'm not able to find it on when I'm sharing my screen. Now it's not working. Yeah, cool. Let's continue. Okay. Yeah, so what we see is a lot of time at Sign, there are teams which realize that this is not the right market for them, but the team is strong enough that the process is called as pivoting. They pivot and look at a different innovation. They change their strategy and they look at the different product that a different innovation that they can build, which can kind of, which can have a better uptake in the market. So even if a product fails, if you have a right team, then you would still have the possibility of succeeding. So two main things. One is understanding the market need and the importance of having a good, well-rounded team. Okay, that's the main thing I wanted to kind of convey in this slide. Now, coming back to the lean canvas, the fundamental part of our discussion today. I said it is a single page, a one-page business plan template. And I showed you how it looks like. It's got 9 building blocks. Different things are written on it, which we will look at it in some time. What it also does is that it'll help in making your business plan very concise. And this was created by Ash Maurya, a person called as Ash Maurya. And this was adapted from something called as the business model canvas. We don't have to go into that. Basically meaning is that it is a one-page template for you to write your entire business model. And I had once in interaction, I was able to interact with Ash himself at Sign when we did a sort of small session on business model, on the lean model canvas last month. And you may be thinking, why a lot of people write big business plans of going to multiple pages, etc. Why need a small canvas? Is it enough? One is that it will help you in verifying your product or idea, because you would be going into the market, collecting feedback, reworking onto that canvas. So it helps in verifying your product or data. It helps you focusing on the customer, because unless and until you realize what the customer needs are, no matter what product, how beautiful it looks like, they wouldn't buy it if it is of not use to them. And then sell before you build methodology. As I said, you make part of it and collect feedback, and then keep on building, and it's an iterative process, and that's how you kind of go looking at product building. Now, this is how the canvas would look like. It has got 9 building blocks. Okay, we will start with the problem. One is identifying. So as I'm explaining this, all of you are working on different problem statements, right? You could look at your problem and try to think through as I kind of explain it through the slides. Okay, one is identifying your customers' top 3 problems. What are the top 3 problems of your customers? Write it down, and then identify what are the existing alternatives. How are these problems currently solved in the market? The reason being is that you need to know how important this problem is for the person. For example, there are 2 ways of looking at it. It's called either at a vitamin or a drug. There are vitamin tablets which you get in the market, right? Would that sell more, or would a paracetamol sell more? Obviously, a paracetamol tablet, which is a painkiller, would sell more than a vitamin. So the pain should be really high. The pain that the problem costs on the customer should be really high for your customer to buy it, and that's why your problem, and next comes a solution. For each of these problems, there should be a solution that should be identified. Okay, and see how many of these can be solved by your innovation. Next is to identify your unique value proposition. So if you're still not understanding what I'm explaining, in the next example, next slide, I'll take the example of Uber. Okay, everybody knows about Uber. We'll take the example of Uber, and let's see how they came up with the lean canvas. Understand what their unique value proposition is. Basically, a very compelling story, a very compelling advantage that your innovation is giving to the customer, and why the customer should pay for it. And that should be as concise as possible, because a lot of these, what happens is, a lot of these times, even incubation managers or investors, they get a lot of applications, right? And they need to find out which is the best one for them in terms of investing or interacting, etc. So if you give a big presentation, or even a business plan which is running into multiple pages, it may not be of interest. It may not be of interest to them, because even they're not able to understand what it is. So a strong value proposition, unique value proposition, which is a single sentence value proposition, maybe a couple of sentences explaining why you're different and worth paying attention. That is what will help you in kind of getting attention. Next is your customer segment. Ideally, the customer segment should come first, but I'll explain why I'm taking it later. Customer is king. Until you identify what your customer needs are and who your customers are, it's not going to be easy, because you'll be building, and once you build, you'll be like wondering who's going to buy. Identifying that at the early stage itself would help you in terms of targeting these customers at a very early stage. And even in terms of customers, there are different set of customers. For example, when I started, when I bought an iPhone, I got it in the year 2016, whereas an iPhone was launched in 2009, I think. I got it 7 years afterwards. But a lot of my friends got it in 2010, 11, when the phone was launched. So there is something called as the innovation curve, which starts with early adopters. So it starts with early adopters, early majority, late majority, and then there is the laggards. So I was in the laggard space, wherein a lot of people told it's a good thing to buy, but then I took my own time to buy it. Same, if you take the example of movies, a lot of people go and watch the movie first day, first show. And there are some who would watch the movie after you hear feedback from your friends and family, etc. So same way, when you build a product and bring it to the market, there will be people who would want to buy it and try out new things. That would be your early adopters, and you need to identify your early adopters very early, because somebody needs to buy it. You put in so much of effort, etc. For what? For you to get return on investment for your time, for your money you invested, the people that you've spoken to, etc. So identifying these early people who buy your product becomes very important. Now, after this comes in channels. How do you kind of reach your customers? There are different ways. For example, if you are selling the water bottle example, and again, coming back to the water bottle, let's say Bisleri. What are the different ways in which Bisleri would try to sell their product? Hello, can somebody type in something? How do FMCG company advertising? Yeah, where do they advertise? Camel ads. Yeah, they advertise on TV. They show these camels who are thirsty. How do they reach the customers? One is advertising. Yeah, you can give them in large meetings, creating awareness. You create awareness in the mind of your customer. For early stage startups, it becomes very difficult for you to do advertising because they cost a lot. Instead, what you can do is use social media. One is social media marketing is there, and then you have samples which you can give. For example, it depends whether who you're selling it to. There are different types of models, and you need to identify whether it is a B2B, which is business to business, meaning Bisleri would be if they're making Bisleri is not a good example. For example, if you're making a ceiling fan, selling it to a customer on e-commerce channels such as Amazon would be one way of reaching a customer if you're directly selling it to the customer, or if you're targeting a large enterprise such as, for example, the Indian Railways. They need ceiling fans, right, to be put in the railway station. That would be a B2B or a B2 business to business or a business to government kind of a sale. So you need to identify who you're selling it to. That's why I said identifying your customers is important, because the dynamics of selling it to an individual would be very different from the dynamics of selling it to a larger organization, or a B2B or a business to government is even more difficult, because they look at tendering, they look at multiple they would specifications they need. For example, if it is a customer selling a fan, it's fairly simple. They need, it should be low in terms of electricity, and it should have good speed, etc. Whereas if you're selling it to the Indian Railways, they will see we will need bulk, so we need 60% discount, and there'll be a host of other things that they will need, which is a completely different ballpark. So you need to identify who you're selling it to, who your customer is, and how you're going to reach out to them. That comes in your channels. Next is how you track. Next is key metrics, as to how do you track whether your business is doing good, bad, or it is going south. Any business, one is in terms of revenue, but revenue comes in, it's on a monthly basis, but or when you file in your IT returns, etc. That's when you realize how much of revenue your company is generating. But in terms of breaking down into smaller units, number of units of Bisleri being sold, number of people who are actively engaging with you on social media, number of customers who are satisfied. That's why companies have ratings for their products, for their services, etc. Physical and hardware sort of startups, they will get feedback from their customers. You'll often see, if you travel on Indigo Airlines or whatever airlines, they will be asking you for a lot of feedback. So they will kind of, what they're trying to do is identifying if your customers are happy or not. There are different ways of analytics that people use. Number of people who are buying it through different e-commerce websites or through their mobiles. There are different metrics which are getting analyzed by these companies to understand if you're doing well in your business. Next is your cost and your revenue. How much you're incurring in terms of your fixed cost and your variable cost. We don't have time to get into that. And what is your sort of revenue which you're getting? Your right hand side should be higher than your left hand side to be profitable. Lastly, there's the ninth building block, the unfair advantage, something that can't be easily copied or bought. It could be IP, it could be data, it could be the service that you give, it could be the number of people who are using it, which is, I mean, for an early stage startup that wouldn't count, but number of the cost advantage probably, but a lot of at a very early stage. And since we're dealing with technology, it's mostly the strength of your technology and you know, how advanced you are in terms of providing service to your customers, etc., which is difficult for somebody to replicate when they are at an early stage. Cool. So this is the canvas. This is the lean model canvas. Let's take the same slide, but let's take the example of Uber. All of you know Uber, right? So you're going to help me fill this slide. Okay, I'm going to look into your chat boxes now. You need to tell me, so when Uber started, okay, who were there, what is the problem they're trying to solve? Chat boxes, please. See. So I can hear Hari saying, Hari is active, thank you, Hari. Thanks, Shreyas. Irregular public transport. Yeah. What was your problem? That the main problem what they're trying to solve was what? Move from A to B. Yeah. But what is that was the solution? But what is the main problem? Availability. And how expensive are they? Was it expensive? Yeah. It is the problem was cabs were expensive. One of the problems that they're solving, one is that the cabs are expensive. What else? Rates, yeah, rates were visible. It is, you're telling about the solution. You're telling about the solution. I'm asking the problem. Yeah, finding a cab. Finding a cab was a problem. Finding a cab on time was another problem, which is basically availability. Yeah. Security is another one. Good. What else? Driver shortage. Driver shortage is what they were saying. There were drivers. I would say there were a lot of drivers. Problem is they were not. It was not on demand. Cool. So what are the alternatives which was there? What are the existing alternatives? So there was no Ola at that time. It was Uber when they started off. Okay. Yeah, I knew somebody would type Ola. So this is when they started off. Yeah, Meru was there. Meru, I think was there. Yeah. Normal taxis, right? No, Rapido and all came in much. Yeah, I'm talking about 2007, 8, 9 when Uber was just piloting and starting up. There was public transport. Your own car. You need to buy your own car. Cool. So these are some of the existing alternatives. And what, as I said, in solutions, you need to outline a possible solution to each of the problem. Okay. So what is the solution they gave for expensive cab was, it was much cheaper cabs. They were giving pricing transparency. Even before you could board the cab, you could find out how much would it cost. Finding a cab on time, yeah, from any location, just like on demand drive. It was like cab on demand. What else? Security. For security, what did they give? For security, you could share your ride, etc. Okay, cool. Now, what is a single value proposition that Uber gave? Yeah, GPS enabled security. Yeah, you could rate the drivers. Yeah. Now, next is what was the unique value proposition that Uber was giving the customers? Main thing. Next, people can pretty much, yeah. Good. Yeah. Find a cab. Yeah. Yeah. I don't want to answer. What is the main value proposition that Uber was giving? Perfect. Travel from A to B in a single click. Yes. Yes, that's the answer. It's basically at your fingertip, right? Single click to book your ride from A to B 24/7, 365. And if I am an investor, I'm just looking at it. You can book your cab. A single click to book your cab from A to B 24/7, 365 days. I would look at it once again. Like, hey, what is he solving? That was the kind of solution that Uber is giving. It is, in one word, another one is convenience at your fingertips. And that is what they were really selling, right? Now, let us look at the customer segments. Who are their customers? Hello, who are their customers? Who would use their product? Public, yeah, but who? Somebody who's got their own vehicle may not need it. Those who don't own a, yeah, but basically they're basically what do you call it? Commuters, right? Or commuters of this. Yeah, workers who need to go to office. This one, right? But for me, passengers, commuters, yeah, office goers who want to travel. Basically, yeah, anyone who wants to travel, commuters, right? Anybody else? Who was Uber targeting? Young people, yeah, fair enough. I'll give 1 minute for you to think through. Who was, one was commuters, but they were targeting somebody else as well. Yeah, you're all talking about the commuters, right? Customers, they were targeting the commute. Yes, you got it. They were targeting the drivers as well, right? Yeah, they were targeting the drivers as well, cab drivers. Brilliant. They had a completely different interface. They had their own app. Now, since that is why I said identifying customer segment is important, because, for example, Uber does not have, at that time, didn't even have a single cab by themselves. They were all depending on people who could share their vehicle, and you could integrate onto the Uber app and integrate onto Google Maps, and that's how they were. Now, for drivers, what are the problems that they were solving? Now it's completely different sort of thing we have now. For drivers, what problem of drivers were they solving? More job hours, flexible timings. Yeah. Flexible timing. Somebody's getting the customers. Yeah. A fair pay. Yeah. Debatable. Yeah. Knowing the customers. And both ways. And even drivers as well. Drivers get to know the customers, and customers get to know the drivers. Yeah. And what solution did they have for the drivers? Yeah. Yeah. Oh, this will be the fixed timing would be the problem. Not knowing, not knowing who their customers are. And what solution they gave? They gave flexible timing. Job security, yeah, flexible timings they gave, ratings they gave, so that they could just take the cab anytime, and they were able to find customers. They were able to find customers and cabs. So that was how they kind of targeted their users. So that's how I said earlier that you need to identify your customer segments first, and that is not possible sitting in your office. It's not possible while you're researching on the web. You need to go out there and meet people, meet your potential customers, and ask them what is that you need. For example, when you guys are making agri sort of problem statements, right? So you identify who your customers are, and figure out whether they are really your customers. So you go them and tell them that, hey, I'm making this thing. Would you be interested in buying it? They say, no, it doesn't look great. I already use this. So you assess what the existing alternatives are. Yeah, identify which existing alternatives and see how better you are there from them. Then define the problem statement, then come to the solution that will, and your customer segment put together will help you refine your value proposition. Now, how are they reaching the customers? When they started off, huh? Not now. How did you come to know about Uber? Hello? Somebody typing in chat? I'm not able to see. Yeah. Advertisement, yeah. But how did they advertise? TV ads and all came much later. Stickers on cab, yeah, no. But fundamentally, what did they try to do? Referral, perfect. They and Sanket, referrals. That is how even I got. You refer your friend, you both of you get 100 rupees or 200 rupees or whatever. Referrals. And what's the right spelling of referrals? Referrals, and then word of mouth. They say Uber is good, I got so much of cash back, this, that, etc. And then refer and earn money, yeah, and then probably ads and all those things which came in much later. But it was mostly through referrals that Uber came into the market, really. Now, what would be your cost structure? Fairly simple. For Uber, what would have been the cost structure? Yeah, what would be the cost? Please type in. 1 kilometer, what would be the cost structure? One is salaries. You need to pay salaries, they need to pay customer service representative, and then there's multiple sort of people. You need to sometimes they used to have their own drivers as well later on. What else? What are the different costs? You need to build the app, right? Yeah, app development, maintenance. What else do they have? Marketing, sales. Well, it's marketing and sales. Advertisements. What else? Basically, it's if they have any rental, if they're using capex, I mean, if they need to buy servers, etc., vehicle maintenance, yeah. And what was the revenue? It was fairly simple. They take a commission. Commission on each ride is what is roughly around 25% commission they take for. So if you pay 100 rupees to Uber, the driver used to get 75 rupees, and Uber used to get 25. Good model, no? They don't have to do anything. They just keep getting paid. Just make an app, connect it. I mean, it's not easy, and with all the infrastructure and all that, but yeah, it was recurring sort of model. what are the key metrics in which they were able to track that they were doing well? What are the key metrics? So basically, how did they realize that this business is picking up? Number of users, number of downloads, right? What outcome? Number of drivers, perfect. Yeah, revenues is one. Yeah, but revenues, you keep getting revenues to your company, right? But only if it is higher than your cost, as you said, the right hand side should be greater than your left hand side. Yeah, Serge asked, you would be getting revenues, but you need to really figure out that is it justifiable, your revenues, depending on the amount of cost which is gone into it, profits. Yeah, certain businesses are still not profitable, but they're making revenues, right? Acceptance of public, good feedback. Yeah, feedback. Yeah. Well, investors do invest in loss-making companies as well, as you've seen in Paytm. Please don't quote me, but yeah, they're still not profitable. But they keep getting investments. Even large companies, large unicorns, they're still not profitable. Yeah, number of drivers joining, number of rides completed, and feedback. And what would be the unfair advantage? What would be the unfair advantage that Uber has, which would make it difficult for somebody else to get into the market? Ola did, but now if somebody needs to get into the market, unfair advantage basically means that what is the advantage for the company? What is the advantage for the company that others, if they were trying to get into the market, did not? First of its kind, yeah. But if somebody else is coming in, they're ahead of the market. One is that the first mover, it's called as the first mover advantage when you say they are first of its kind. Yeah. But there could be other players. All odds came in, but what did Uber have? Uber had data. They knew where the hotspots where people would be. They knew that what should be the pricing, availability of cabs. There would be more drivers, and so they were able to kind of give that low price. Somebody coming in later into the market would need to, bleed so much, bleed in the sense that they need to spend more money.
Rakesh,
Yeah.
would an advantage be that they already had a developed platform which had been exercised all over the world? So they had a lot of knowledge about how to work with drivers and,
Yeah.
revenue model. So the platform is the important thing, right? So they had a stable platform which worked.
Yeah.
How much of an advantage is that? Because we've always told students that you need to build a moat around your offering, in the sense that if a richer guy comes and throws money at it, more money than you have, then you shouldn't collapse, basically. So how valuable is that platform that they have?
For software related, it would be easier for somebody to kind of break in. But if you're looking at, for example, in agriculture, a sensor and a software put together like an integrated solution, like an embedded system, would be much more difficult for somebody to break into, as compared to an app. So
But do you think that the process that they have is really the advantage? Because software is just a manifestation of the process in the background, dealing with customers, customer complaints, responding to the market. How important is the process which comes out of experience, basically?
It's called the customer blueprint, wherein they would know what should be the processes to be set, etc. It really depends, because a lot of things, as you said, comes in through learning. And a new company who would, it happens a lot in startups also, who would try to get in a key employee from Uber, for example, into Ola. He has all the details, right? Lot of companies do that. They try to get in key employees from other startups and make it is doable. But that is a strong advantage that a company has, definitely.
So this can be a real upset to any company if your key person gets bought out by the competition, right?
poaching happens, and that is why in the employment agreement you often have non-compete clauses and things like that. But we have seen even with large companies joining their competitors and so on and so forth. Usually, when they enforce the no compete clause, it is for a period of 2 years that your key employee or a senior employee should not be joining your direct competitors. Yeah.
No, the reason I'm saying this is because these students should also keep in mind that just having a bright idea is not enough. They need to protect that idea in some way. Ideally, I say that if you do a deeper degree or a MTech or whatever it is, you get deeper technology which others can't just copy, right? And if you go in yourself, right, and it's just a little app which somebody else can build very fast, right? Then you don't have an advantage. So you need to have an advantage of a network of people who and that where to acquire a similar network or process will take other people time. So it gives you at least a 6 months to 1 year lead,
1 year lead. Yeah, definitely.
right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So that's all elements of the unfair advantage. Well, unfair advantage means fair business advantage that you
Yes,
should
yes.
have.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, thanks. No, this is a very nice way of doing it actually. This laying it all out on one page and forcing people to think around these items is a very elegant way of thinking through these issues, right? And the more practice you have, the better you get at it. In fact, they should now be looking at other businesses and trying to map them into a table like that. So when they map their own business idea into this, it will give them a bit of practice also.
That's a good suggestion, actually, Professor Kavi. Mapping into other businesses. What we could potentially do is I can probably share details of a particular startup that we are incubating, maybe in the agri space. We have somebody working in the agri blockchain sort of business. I can check with the founder, and I will share their website and whatever information you can get online. I can make a small caselet out of it and give it to the students based on what is available online and what material that we provide. They can fill in this canvas, and I can get in the founder to kind of come for a session and see whatever assumptions and whatever, because we're not actually working on that. Only the founder would know the nuts and bolts of each of these building blocks, right? And this will enable the students to think and see if their assumptions about the business is correct or not. That is one, and that would really give insights as to how a founder thinks, who is got skin in the game, who's actually working on the innovation compared to somebody who's seeing it from the outside.
I think that's a very good idea. We could consider that. We'd be happy to have him speak especially if he's in the agriculture space, as to how he dreamt up the idea and actually implemented it and pushed it out. I think that he could be like a role model to these others, right? But this is a quite elegant way of doing it. In fact, business mein kya hai that your sales has to be bigger than your profit. I mean, than your expenses, and you call that profit. You got to increase that as much as you can, basically, right? By increasing the reach of your business and this, that, and the other. But these kind of things will let us approach a need, an unmet need that we are trying to identify in a different kind of way, right? So essentially, you want to address an unmet need while making sure that others also don't jump into it, right?
Correct.
And like in war, everything is fair in war. They will steal your key employees. They might want to buy you out quite early. They might kind of, make it difficult for you in some ways and stuff like that. So there seems to be some value here to keeping quiet about what you're doing until you're just about to burst onto the market.
Yeah, a lot of people, a lot of startups work in that stealth mode.
Yeah, so ज़्यादा लोगों से बात नहीं करना, because you never know who will pick up your idea and implement it. Because if you have a big company out there which is already working in this space and they get a sniff of this idea, then they can just deploy it much easier than you,
Yeah.
right? So maybe you should pretend to do something else just to put other people off the scent. Maybe, I don't know. Any ideas on that front?
So it's about the execution part of it, really. And for large companies, it is not easy for them to work on. A lot of them would see as startups as an acquisition target. A lot of the many reasons why we don't get to see startups is that they've been acquired by larger entities and then they get merged with it, and they find it much cheaper than actually building solutions, putting people to deploy and test it, get feedback, and all of that. But
do you
there are examples.
do you think in the Indian market we are so garib in our mentality that people who do these startups, thoda sa paisa dekha, they grab it and there goes your startup basically, and they don't want to stick it out till the end to see, let's see how big we can become, because that requires a different mentality. It requires far more ambition. Won't you agree?
Yes, I agree. I've seen it. One of our startups got acquired last week. It depends on a lot of factors. So I can give an example of Cogno.ai. IIT Bombay alum. He was a student in his 4th year of computer science department. He made this fintech chatbot, which basically can be integrated to any bank, which could help in their customer service. So the customer, the problem he was trying to solve was that the customers would need to dial a number, customer care person. Sometimes it is IVR, which is integrated voice recording system. It takes a lot of time to solve these customer things, customer issues. So this chatbot, you used to type it in, and then they would give the right answer, and if it wasn't resolved, then it would take it to the kind of the person. Later on, he kind of realized that there is a market in terms of positioning it for different NBFCs, non-banking financial corporations. So there were multiple banks that he went on to. He got such marquee customers like ICICI Bank, HDFC. Then the smaller players came on board. After a point in time, he felt that he grew to a kind of a 80-member team. There were only 2 of them at the beginning, and it grew to 4, 10, 20. Now it is 80. Beyond a time, he kind of felt that working with smaller banks or smaller NBFCs, which is smaller financial institutions, which is taking a lot of time and energy. And it was he was saying that he used to work for 17, 18 hours a day trying to get in customers, resolving their customer issues. When one of the banks told them that they would want to acquire them, and that would kind of increase the scale of reaching a pan-India market much faster, and they were able to give him sort of a valuation, pretty decent valuation. He said, I think that would do more justice. My technology will be adopted by a much larger sort of people. But that came in, this was 2017, and he sold the company in 2021. He kind of, till then, he put in all the efforts, and then that's how he did. There was passion for him to work, put in that number of hours. But later on, he realized that it beyond a time, it was getting a small company to scale at that level. Another company who was making electric vehicles, a woman entrepreneur, she did initial sales, but then the distributor network and all these negotiations with customers, all that was taking a lot of time and bandwidth. The larger to make this it takes, people wouldn't probably think of more than 100 crores, 200 crores, 300 crores, and this was a game which was running into billions, the electric vehicle market, and they felt a larger player would be able to do much more better in terms of scaling up, and then they decide when to exit the kind of the business, and and they get good money out of it as well. So it really depends on what your motivation is, whether it is technology used into multiple, just build something. Most of them are serial innovators. They like building multiple things. They sell it off. They build something else. So it really depends on what drives individuals. At Sign, what I've usually seen is that people are so passionate about entrepreneurship. They want to see it the entire life cycle till the point they felt that okay, this is solving a major problem existing in the market, and now it is time to scale up. Whether they raise enough capital to do it, or they find a partner to kind of help them with it, or extend the use in which they try to kind of reach out to the masses in a large scale.
Sorry, I kind of interrupted you and we kind of digressed. Maybe we should get back to the sheet and I'll save my questions until the end, because these are the conversations that we should be having, which I'm sure that the students don't have an opportunity to ask anybody these kind of questions, and these can only happen in a kind of conversation like the one that we are having now. So please do continue.
Sure,
Right,
sure,
but
sure.
very useful indeed. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So you guys made this canvas, right? This is lean model canvas, and you guys made it. And it's not just me. I just gave you the framework of it, and it remains the same for all business. But what is important is that this is something which is a proven business model, and in your case, nothing is proven as yet. It is proven when somebody is willing to pay for it. That's how you're able to make the entire canvas in its entirety. But when it is an early stage, you make a lot of assumptions. Sometimes you feel that your assumptions are not right. And earlier you know your assumptions are not right, the better it is for you, because you can change your model accordingly. And that's why getting feedback from customers, building, and that's the whole process of lean canvas. Lean meaning you build, you measure, you learn, and then you build again, you measure. Measure meaning you go and meet people and you measure whether it is working or not. You learn and again you build, and that's why it is called as a lean canvas. I don't want to get into the business model canvas because it's slightly not for startups, but a startup usually it is on a problem solution kind of definition. You always solve something, you build to solve something, then make something and look for a problem that wouldn't sell in most of the cases. I hope this kind of framework is clear for all of you. Otherwise, you can ask any questions in the chat box, and I will give the solution for this Uber's lean canvas, the one which is professionally made and the one which is made by you, and you can see the difference. One thing is that we missed this driver customer segment, right? And in the next slide, just see how the canvas in each of these customer segment, they have put in a different color coding. So if you look at drivers, it would be like part-time job opportunity, specific to the driver segment, and this is specific to the passenger segment. So let's see what it says, or I can just share the slide with you. I mean, you can check how you solved it compared to what was solved professionally by Ash Maurya, the founder of Lean Canvas. Okay, as I said, this is most important. You modify your lean canvas according to the feedback you receive from your customers, and that is key. Because if you think that, okay, I made a model and it is here to stay, that wouldn't work, because a lot of these are based on your assumptions. Okay, now I will get into what are the different elements which, number one is called as the elevator pitch. The reason why it's called an elevator pitch is because when you go in an elevator, as in a lift, okay, and you happen to meet an investor on one of the floors, and till the time you're in the elevator, you need to convince that investor about your business and make a deal. How much time do you have in an elevator? Roughly depends on which floor you're going and how fast the lift is, but usually you get less than 2 minutes or less than 1 minute in an elevator. So you make something so short and crisp, like how we made here under the value proposition, very crisp. A single click to book your cab from A to B 24/7, 365 days in a year. And then, that was what, 10 seconds? An investor would be wanting to know more about what you guys do, what you're doing. That comes in an elevator pitch. Okay, you guys made that, by the way, for Uber. Less than 50 words. Not every business can be explained in like that. Uber is easy because we could relate to it, but if you're making something like a sensor for soil testing parameters for essential elements, that probably takes more time to explain. So you have 2 minutes to write down what you think it is, and keep modifying. That comes in the elevator pitch. This is what usually when we get startup applications, this is the main slide that we look at, and then we decide whether to move to the next slide or not, which is the team. Basically, right, the founding team. Another thing we look in this slide is whether that person is full-time or part-time. Okay, because a startup needs full-time commitment. There is no part-time work in startup. I mean, you are studying now, but all our entrepreneurs are into it full-time. And you mentioned the same with your advisors and mentors. Most of these advisors are part-time. And the remaining slides is your business, is your lean canvas, problem, opportunity, solution. Yeah, this is different. You need to tell what the stage is. Is it just at an idea stage? Is it at a pen and paper stage? Or have you build a prototype around it? Show some photos or demo of your prototype, how it looks like and how it works. That is convincing the person to know more about it, what you're doing. What is you did the unique value proposition, competitive landscape. Who are your competitors, the companies who's doing very similar to what you're doing? So if I write, it'll be Ola, it'll be Meru, it'll be Rapido, multiple examples that you gave, right? And on each of these parameters, on cost, convenience, it could be on ratings, multiple, it could be on ease of use. There are multiple parameters, and you rate each of your competitors and say how better your company is than the other. Or you can say probably the company 2 is better here, but we are not far behind, but we are strong in other parameters. Be open and very frank with your investors. I'm telling in more in terms of investment, because even at Sign, when we evaluate companies, we think like an investor. Is it worth investing in this particular startup? If I put my money, will I get so much of return? Is it creating an impact in the society? All these are some of the things that we look at while investing, while incubating.
I think Rakesh, I'll just intervene here. This is very important what you said, when you say competitive landscape, often we encounter it with students who are defending their work, whether it's their BE project or their MTech project or whatever it is, right? So it applies to everything in life. So when they are defending their project, if they try to act as though that's the best thing that's happened since smoked cheese or whatever, and there's nothing wrong with it, and it's best in any way, then the person is bullshitting basically, and they've not done their homework. Okay. And it's a sure indicator that the guy hasn't a clue if he says that everything is great. If they're able to accurately compare their technology with other things that exist in the market, it indicates a certain maturity as an engineer. It indicates that they've done their homework as to what is there in the marketplace. In fact, we value if they are objective and say that this is not good enough, rather than say this is the best thing that's ever happened. Okay. So same thing applies to all these things, right? When you're evaluating your technology, if you are objective and accurate about where you believe you stand, and can be frank about your strengths and weaknesses, that's what I would look at as an investor, and that's what I would look at as a faculty uh, who's trying to assess you. If you're objective and frank about where you believe your place is, I will have greater respect. So the same thing applies to investors who look at the potential investment ideas. If you know where you stand in the marketplace by being frank and saying, I'm good at this, but I'm not good at this, not good at this. These are places I need to develop my strength. I would have far more faith in this kind of person who's living in a real world rather than somebody else who's behaving, who's like living in a make-believe world where they think that everything that they have is great and there's nothing else like it in the market. It just shows that they don't know. What do you think about that?
Correct. We see sometimes when you ask about competition, they say no competition. And then we're like, okay, that means we'll have to do that homework and tell them these are not direct competitions, but these are people who are trying to solve the problem in a similar way that you're doing. Most of the time they say that there is nobody like us, we are like first in the market, there's nothing. But what is the immediate existing, even if it is existing alternative, which I mentioned in the canvas, how good or how close or how, even if they're better, tell us how they're better and how you can be better at other things than them. That would tell us that, okay, you are seeing it objectively, you've done your homework like what sir said. But at the same time, a lot of startups don't do that. They don't do that because they would want to position themselves. They feel that there is a fear of them not getting the deal if they say that, okay, we are not good in certain areas. But it all comes, it evolves, because an investor never makes a decision in one presentation. First presentation will look all, all glossy and nice, and But afterwards, when they start asking and when we probe questions, then the truth slowly comes out. Then we realize, okay, there is a direct competitor. They are better at this. These guys are better at that. And then it all boils down at an early stage. It all boils down to the team. Can the team execute? Even if there is a strong competition, are they? Another thing we look at is the team frank with us, and what do you call it? It's integrity of the team that we look at the initial stages. Yes, sir. Sorry, somebody was saying something?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, cool. So yeah, I'll continue with the slides. Next is the customer segment and the market size. Okay, so along with the customer, which is the right hand side of the canvas, there is also, you need to tell how big is it. For example, the passenger market and the driver market is huge. But if you're making it something in agriculture, you identify whether, as I said, whether it is you're selling it to the customer, B2C or B2B. How big is the customer segment? What age group you're targeting? I mean, I don't know, it really depends on what you're solving. But it needs to tell in terms of rupee number, rupee figure, or dollar figure as to how big the market is. For example, if there are if you're targeting a particular region in Maharashtra, and there are so many farmers here, each farm would probably spend so much of money. If everybody buys it, that becomes your total market. So if it is whole of India you're targeting, that becomes your total market. Then comes in your target, it is called as the total addressable market, which is whole of India. But if you're seeing it as Maharashtra region that you want to target, it is called as the SAM, service addressable market. This is not my sort of presentation focus, that's why I didn't put it here. But usually it is the total market. What is the service addressable market, for example, in Maharashtra, where you're going to target, and then your target market. Where exactly, which particular region am I going to see my early adopters, where I'm going to sell first? And that is what the investors look at, is to see, okay, the market is huge, which means that they have, if they scale up, this is so much of the pie that they can capture. And they're starting small, which is fine. Are they getting good traction? They use the word traction, which basically means, are they getting good uptake from the customers? They're willing to buy this product, they're willing to pre-book the product, they're willing to do a pilot. All these creates traction for the investors, that something is there and people are responding positively to it. And that it's a picture you try to create in your investor, saying that there is a big opportunity, I'm targeting so much, but I can slowly, with time, if you put money in me, I can capture the remaining market. And that sort of a confidence should be given to the investor at this point in time. Next is channel. We discussed this, B2B, B2C, etc. Revenue model, how you're going to make your money. Uber said it is commission. For you, is it selling the device? How much margin you're going to make? How much you're going to price it for? How much will the distributor take it? All those comes into, it's an interesting session by itself on revenue model. Then it's your cost. Basically, you put in all your fixed cost, your variable costs, all of these put together, and you decide, you plan how big your team is going to expand, how much market you want to capture, which basically means that you would need more people on the ground, etc. So all this comes into your cost. And key metrics and validation, we saw 18 months plan. So you can't plan beyond 12 to 18 months, right? Because a lot of factors keep happening which are beyond the control. For example, COVID happens, nobody could predict that. What is within the possibility, if you're able to say within 18 months, I want to take my prototype from, it's called the technology readiness level. I don't know if that has been covered. A TRL, my product is ready at this stage. I'm going to convert and make it a working prototype, and I'm going to do more testing to it. I'm going to make it into a design for manufacturing sort of a stage. I'm going to do my regulatory clearance, and then I'm going to do initial testing, like that. If you put it down into 18 months, and then I'm going to do a pilot here, I'm going to collect feedback from that, and my final product will be ready after 3 years or 2 years, that's fine. But whether you have a proper milestone in terms of, I'm going to achieve this in certain period in time, and it's okay if it changes, but it should be like 3 months, shouldn't become 30 months. So that sort of practicality should come in the 18-month plan. Yeah, and team, I showed what else. There's one more thing. Yeah, the business model canvas. Usually it ends with the business model canvas. I took it first because that was the kind of theme for today. Great. If there are any questions, I can take that up.
Rakesh, I didn't know what to expect, but I think you've done a superlative job.
I wish it was in a physical
Right.
format, because
And
yeah.
I would invite people to unmute their videos and ask their questions, or you can ask it on chat and we can respond to it here. But one thing I'd like to say, that entrepreneurship is something I feel every engineer should try their hand at, even if it's in a make-believe way, like in this competition. Because entrepreneurship is not only about doing startups, it's about learning communication skills, being aware of the world around, because entrepreneurs have to be aware of the world around. Otherwise, they cannot survive, right? It's not like, you get into a job and for your entire life, you're there in that job. I mean, that's not a very exciting thing to be anyway, unless the job is a very special job. And most jobs are not going to last you a lifetime. So you better put that out of your head. So you have to be entrepreneurial, whether you like it or not. Look at Rakesh. He started off as a life science guy and now he's in a totally different job. Our friend FC Kohli of TCS fame used to say that this was 20 years ago, that people should be ready to change their job at least 5 times in their life. And I feel that 5 times now is about 20 times. Because industries that exist at the moment might not exist tomorrow. Your employer who exists today might not exist tomorrow. If you were a young Turk working in Jet Airways and thinking that you'll become the biggest airline in the world, now you'll be out of a job. Many big companies have come and gone, and especially with startups and new technology and stuff like that, don't believe that you're going to be given the luxury of sticking to one job all your life or one employer all your life. So these are very important skills, right, with which you can spot opportunities, and life is all about spotting opportunities and riding those opportunities as far as they take you, right? So these are actually life skills. It's not innovation and entrepreneurial skills. These are life skills, which is why I personally feel these are important skills. Amit, what do you have to say to this?
Well, I believe yes. So I have also gone through the competition. So yeah, definitely these skills are important. And considering the situation that we have nowadays, so I believe yeah, these skills should be learned.
How about the others? We had Divya who spoke to us earlier.
Yes, I'm available here.
Any questions? Any reactions?
No, sir, it was clearly understandable. And the way he speaks is really impressive. And by asking questions, we are in conscious mind. We could able to answer what he is asking, and we are in attentive session. Nice session,
Okay.
sir. Thank you for your session, Lean Canvas. We have an idea now about what is it.
Okay, great. Thanks, Divya.
Thank
We
you.
have a number of other people. Would you like to unmute your video and at least thank the speaker?
It's okay. I have another meeting at 5:30. Unfortunately, I
fine.
need to get into that.
Yeah.
That's fine.
We have a question from Shubham Chandra. Shubham, would you like to unmute and ask your question?
Yeah, he's written, how can we be sure about our plan? Yeah, I mean, plan is, there's a lot of market research which needs to be done initially. So there are a lot of resources available for example, can you tell what you're trying to solve, Shubham?
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, I was asking if I have certain idea, say in a certain field, how can I be sure that what I am doing, no one else is doing, or my plan is going to work, say in 5 years or
Sure.
in 10 years?
That nobody will know. 5 years, 10 years is too long. Usually, as I said, no, maximum 1 to 2 years is what we can probably foresee. But what is that
Yes.
idea that you're working on?
No, sir, I'm just asking in general.
In general, okay, cool. So as I
Okay,
said,
in
there's a
general.
lot of
Go on.
right. So there is two way of doing a market research. One is a primary market research, and a second is a secondary market research. And the difference is secondary market research is what is available online or your desk research. You go into the library, you identify what segment or what domain you, agriculture, for example, right? And especially in agriculture, what are you looking at? Somebody said smart irrigation systems. Do a Google search, identify who are the top irrigation, if it is a pump manufacturers, or if it is precision agriculture, who are the main companies who are into it? What is their market size? How many products do they sell each year? How many countries are they present in? Do they have any patents which are filed? So you can search on Google patents and see if they're filed for patents. Are they publications? Basically, you're trying to understand is that how crowded or how how the market opportunity is. For example, when we sometimes see a lot of startups in, for example, in edutech, which come to us, and we kind of know that there are a lot of players in educational technology now. Most of them, the market is kind of getting saturated. So similarly, when we get new innovations, we also do a market research from our side. One is through online databases which are available. Some of them are expensive, but what is freely available on Google we search. We have a paid database called as Traction, which most of the investors in India use, and they try to identify when we get trends, as there been investment in this particular domain or not. But from from a student perspective, searching on Google and certain freely available databases is one that comes in the secondary market research. Next is primary market research. You speak to these people who are working in industry, domain experts, professors, faculty members, or industrialists, and ask them, I'm thinking about this particular field. What do you think? Then they will tell that, okay, there has been a lot of research already being done in it, or this looks new. For example, there is a professor from IIT Bombay, Rahul Purwar. He came up with a new way of treating blood cancer. There were few public publications, and there were few companies which was there. It was completely, breakthrough sort of research. Such innovations doesn't happen very often. But otherwise, if it is already a crowded market, existing solutions, see what is the gap, see what is the problem, and then try to fill that particular gap, and that would sell. Unless you do this, you would be one another in the market. You'll be something called as a me too. Somebody else is doing it, I'm also doing it, me too, right? That wouldn't sell. So if you need to be sure about your plan, nobody can be exactly sure, and that's where the leap of faith comes in entrepreneurship. But make sure that you do your primary and secondary market research thoroughly. And that's why I said initially, when I started my slide, I said main reasons why startup fail is there is no market need, and that need assessment will come in by identifying the problem, solution, gap which is existing in the market, and your innovation should be plugging that gap. And again, I mentioned about the vitamin as well as the painkiller. How deeply is the problem affecting the customer? Is it like a vitamin which is like a good wellness thing, but is it like a paracetamol which I would have to take if I have a headache? So that kind of analysis will help you to identify at an initial stage. Things evolve. You get feedback and make. But at an initial stage, these are ways in which you kind of make a decision whether to go ahead or not. And as I said, fail early, fail cheap. The earlier you know this, the better. Because if you're late, some people get so much entrenched and fall in love with their innovation that they're like, even if they realize that this is not going to work, they would still develop it. But that's not a good idea. And that's where incubators and faculty members and all these mentors would help you in kind of targeting what your innovation should be. I hope that helped.
Very useful.
Yes, sir.
In fact, maybe in the interest of time, because you need to go to another meeting, we should call it a day. I'll leave that. I thank you very much from all of us, and I thank the audience for having stuck until the end. I hope they've got something useful from this. I've got a lot of useful stuff. So, will you be by giving us your slides or sharing your slides with us in
I
case
will-
for reference?
Yeah, I will share it across. No problem.
Great. So then I shall hand over the floor to our anchor here, Amit, to close the session. Thank you very much, Rakesh. We really
Thank you
appreciate
so
this.
much.
Thank you so much, sir. I think it was a great session. And if there are any questions, maybe we can note them down and forward them to you later so that you can reply to us and we'll reply to the students. Great. Thank you. Thank you everyone for joining today. Thank you for the session, sir. Thank you. Bye-bye. Good evening.
Take care. God
Bye.
bless.